Welcome to the Gaming Persona Podcast. This is a show that explores who we become when we play games. I'm your host, Dr. Gameology, from YouTube and other things on the internet, and graduate school classrooms across the country. We're going to need to work on that, Gene. And I'm joined by one co-host and one of my new allies that I'm adding to my gaming journey. All right, so Gene, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. I'm relishing the fact that, up here, fall exists and it's still not 90 degrees like it is back in Florida.
Why do you always use our intro as an opportunity to jab at me about my terrible state?
I'm just really happy with my move.
Yeah, we call that resentment in my line of work. All right, well, I'm glad to hear it. I've been looking forward to this for 2 weeks. This is our first time doing the show with a off week in the middle. I think it felt like a good change. How did it feel for you?
Yeah, not bad. It feels more, like we have room to stretch and figure out what topics we want to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. And without Jenny, we totally have botched the flow of our intro. Where can our listeners find us?
The Gaming Persona can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and most anywhere else podcasts can be found. If you are enjoying our content, be sure to leave a review on your favorite listening app.
I think that this is a really good opportunity for us to finally see the value of doing a canned intro that is the same every episode so
Sure.
that I can just insert it and we can go straight into the conversation every week.
Yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, we have a guest. You don't see Jenny at the bottom of the screen. You see Robin. So I'm going to go ahead and do our intro. Robin, thank you so much for joining us. And for our listeners, Robin Lavallée is the CEO of Implicit Conversions. What they do is they're bringing classic PSP, and PS1 games through emulation on PS4 and PS5 so that we can continue to play them in the modern era. Before Implicit, Robin worked at Meta on the Oculus Quest, which, by the way, is how I work out every single day. So exercise and gaming for the win. And also at Project Horizon. And also he worked at Twitch on the TV apps and video player team. So cool. And also at 2K Games, Freema, and Ubisoft, where he learned the professional basis of game programming through Prince of Persia, Assassin's Creed, and many other games. All right, so Robin, just by reading your bio, I'm serious. Everything you have done is in some way mentioned and dissected in my book that I wrote about how video games have become the modern mythology. And I'm really hoping this episode ages well because you have been in all the things that I've been watching as a game player and as a psychology focused individual and saying this was a really important thing for video games for just the overall story. So I'm already geeking out and I haven't even asked you a question yet.
I feel the pressure now.
Yes, that is exactly what I meant to do. No, just relax. The Gaming Persona is not a professional presentation. It's not meant to be stuck up. There's no peer reviewers because we don't like them on this show. They all need a hug. So if you know a peer reviewer, just walk up to them, give them a hug. They might not have the people skills to know how to understand that, but academic humor. Actually, no, that's a coping skill for an ego wound. Anyway, let's do the opening segment. The Ordinary World. Robin, I absolutely want to hear from you on this too. You're part of the show today. The Ordinary World is where we talk about our journey with video games this week. So, would you like to share with us first, like anything you're playing or anything that,
Yes.
yeah, what have you been up to?
I've been playing Sea of Stars on the Switch recently,
Oh,
which is a
great.
game by Sabotage Studio. Happens to be colleagues I work with at Freema. I know them personally. And so to see basically Chrono Triggers being redone, it looks like Mario RPG, Chrono Trigger. It's awesome. I love the game so far. So
Yeah, I'm only 2 hours into that, but it's a beautiful game.
beautiful. It's people usually say like retro art, retro pixel art is a bit like old style, but then you keep playing and they added like lighting effect and so on, and they really modernized the retro style. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I actually haven't been playing that. It actually went past my scope, so that's going to be one I'm going to have to pick up in the future. What's the premise of the game for anyone who's like me and hasn't been paying attention?
There are two main characters. They're called Solstice Warrior. They were, it's a JRPG style. It's full of cliche, but it assumes itself. Like you start an adventure, start simple, and you have to save the world, obviously.
Yeah.
The gameplay is very tight. The game is well polished. The writing is good. There's lots of humor. Characters are funny. It doesn't drag on. Lots of side quests. Like it really feels like if this game came out 20 years ago, it would have been a masterpiece. So I'm impressed that a small team, like very tight team, was able to ship this game over. It took them, I think, about 5 years from
Yeah,
inception to like you can play in your hand.
yeah. Many developers go with that target of trying to be like Chrono Trigger, but almost none of them really hit it. This one, I think, does.
That's the thing. Like I'm comparing it to Chrono Trigger sometimes. Like, oh yeah, Chrono Trigger is a bit better there, and then this game's better. I'm like, whoa, I'm comparing it actually to one of the best games of the Super NES now. So that's actually kind of cool. Like, even if they don't beat Chrono Trigger sometimes, pretty awesome
Yeah.
result.
Okay. Well, anything that gets compared to Chrono Trigger, that's already high praise. I mean, if it pulls it off. So, yeah, 20 years ago. Ah, man. This show makes me feel old sometimes.
It's more than 20 years, man. Almost probably
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah, I
More than
think
that.
30 years? Are we looking at 30 years since Chrono
no, it,
Trigger?
it came out mid 90s, like 94 or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost mid 2020s.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Talking about hoping the episode ages well, and I ruin it with my bad timeline math. Okay, well, so Gene, you've been playing the same game.
Yeah, just a little. I haven't gotten very far in it yet. Other than that, continuing Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, me too. What act are you on?
Still in Act 1 because we're really scouring for everything.
Yeah, I'm still on Act 1 also, but honestly, I'm only playing about 2 hours a week, so this game could take me a decade to play,
Oh yeah, if
honestly.
you're trying to do everything for sure. There's so many quests if you really look for them.
Oh, I'm past the point in my life where I think I will ever play a game with the goal of doing everything.
Because this game has quests in areas you would not normally find them. Like, if you have a speak with animal spell, you can just talk to a random squirrel and now you have another quest.
That's really cool though. I'm so early in the game, but there's this town in the middle of the woods, the first woods that you get to walk around in. And I just inspected a well and I ended up going down there and having this really long battle with so many swarms of spiders.
Hmm.
And it occurred to me that this is not even valuable for me to be doing. I'm just risking death and being incredibly stupid going into this cavern. So then I took a long rest and I just was really arrogant and like trying to put one of the companions in their place. And they slit my throat and now I'm dead. And then I was
Wow.
like, can you come back to life in this game? Not yet. So I'm not playing this game without my character. That's ludicrous. So I
Oh
had to
wait,
reload my save.
did you not find withers?
When do you find withers?
Oh, okay. So near the crash site, there's a door to the northeast called the Ancient Door, I think. You have to lockpick it, but in there you find an NPC named Withers, and Withers can help you resurrect.
Oh, Well, no, I did not find Withers, but I'm still in. The crash site is right, like southwest
Right.
of where I am, so I can totally just go back there.
He's also the NPC that helps you respec your classes and all that. So he's you should get him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's helpful. I'm really not being guided by anything in this game either. So I think it's really interesting what video games are able to do. Every time I play a new game, something just blows my mind. Baldur's Gate does it every 30 minutes, I feel like, just where I did not even realize that this was possible in a video game. So my original dissertation research that got me my PhD, Robin, just so you know, was in Star Wars: The Old Republic. I did a personality theory breakdown of all the different types of players in that game, and then I did a statistical analysis about what gameplay activities they do and what motivates them in those activities.
Just to add to your thought, I worked at Frima on the port of Star Wars: The Old Republic on Android TV when it came out. We were the team responsible for Qatar.
Oh wow, that's great.
So
So you brought KOTOR to
yeah,
be
it
able
was
to
Android.
play.
Yeah, it was called Android Google TV, Android TV back then. It was new. Like it in 2014 or 15, one of them. 2014.
That's so cool. Well, the hallmark of those games, of course, is the conversation choices and
Yes.
then the light side and dark side alignment and how your character ends up. So when I started playing Baldur's Gate, one of the it was giving me feelings that I haven't had for a decade in a video game where it's like these conversations really matter. Even to the point where I got my throat slit and had to restart like 20 minutes ago because that's the last time I saved. So
Type of game where you lose your progress and you have to do it again.
I hate it. Can't they just auto save every time you take your hand off the mouse? Like that would be so nice. Yeah, so that's my ordinary world. We've all covered it. So let's go ahead and do finding our allies because classic line. It's too dangerous to go alone. All right, so Robin, thank you for joining us and helping me and Gene not have to do this show alone this week. So obviously we're fascinated by the work that you do, and we're so excited for our audience to get to hear us just go through this with you and for you to share different experiences. And I told you when we were doing show prep that Gene and I's friendship really lines up around that PSP era of time. You know, that's I think that the PSP came out right after I finished high school. Or maybe right after you did, Gene. We're 1 year apart.
2004, 2005, 2003,
2004, 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was actually how I played the majority of my games when it first came out.
Awesome.
And then the PSP really carried me for several years. And I loved the Vita too. I think the Vita is one of the saddest stories in video game history.
Yes.
But the PSP is what set the stage for that. So, you know, I'm really excited to have you on the show. And, you know, what are some of the things that you get excited by when you get a new project or when you look at titles that your company might be offered the opportunity to work on?
I think the classic title that people love, like, you know, everybody has a favorite game. If you ask the company, like me, I like the horror games, sometimes JRPG, so Silent Hill was fun. Some other people prefer, like, I don't know, on PSP there was a bunch of Loco Roco. That was a good game. There was Siphon Filter, which we did. So some other games are a bit like more. There's a lot of Sony published game like Ape Escape and so on. There's some games I never played before, like Echo Shift. I don't know if you have played that one, where the game's about shadow and like some of the perspective. So like basically you're moving the camera to change where your character is moving. It's like it's a 2D game in 3D. So
I've played that one. Yeah,
I've played that.
Yeah, so you change the perspective to like remove gaps or holes and so on. So
Yeah.
what get me excited is when like this game I had never played it, but then I saw it in a company with Sony, I'm like, this is cool. Like I could see my kids playing this game again. And so they will never have a PSP, but they have a PS4 and PS5. Now they can play it again. So, um, yeah, I think getting everyone's favorite game being accessible again actually like, make it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many games from that era that if we don't continue to make them available, they just disappear, and then people like us are the only people who bring them up in conversations, and everyone looks at us weird.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that people rebuild those games or they make them a new version, but we kind of lose the original essence. Like I feel like it's a bit like book. You can reprint a book, you can upload, but books are easier. Like the text itself is the same text. I mean, up to a point. Like we probably lost a few books 1,000 years ago, with all the
Yeah.
rewriting of it. But books are an easier medium to preserve. Games have the form factor that comes with it, like the PSP had a screen, and then we had the analog stick. You mentioned the Vita. Vita had a touch screen. They also had a back touch screen. Like if you want to port this to modern, let's say to your PS5, well, you need a way to simulate those touch screen now, in a way that makes sense for the players. Otherwise, they kind of lose the experience. So
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was a game I played a couple years ago where they ported it forward and they just abandoned some of the features, and it was just kind of sad. What was the game? But yeah, it involved a touchscreen feature. Oh, it was it was a 3DS game
I see.
that I think got ported to the Switch, but without the dual screen, you were just flipping through two different menus, so it was
Right.
more on play.
When we were talking about the most recent Theatrhythm sequel, you had said something to me about how it plays on the Switch that kind of made me want to buy it less.
Oh yes, because well, in the 3DS, the last version of the game, the 3DS one, you had different buttons plus the stylus,
The
so you have
stylus.
multiple angles of control. With the newer version on the Switch, it's just your it's just your buttons. The game is less complex than the last one.
Yeah. I really like old features in games. I like the back touchpad, for example. I even felt weird. This is weird. When the Mario games got redone for their big anniversary during COVID, I tried to play Mario 64 and
Mhm.
it's not the weird three-pointed controller, and I just felt odd playing it.
This is
Uh,
very interesting because like a game like Siphon Filter on the PSP, if you remember the PSP, only had one analog stick. So to control the camera, you had to either I don't remember, hold the L button or press like triangle X square. That doesn't
yeah.
make any sense when you try to play now on PS4. So now there's like, do we keep this? Like keep this weird quirky controller to be like, oh, this is the original game? Or do we update the game to use now the two analog stick of your controller to simulate that? So I don't think there's any answer. Some people prefer like the original Mezia, which is like the story part, and some other people will like let's say my kids, they would be like, well, no, I want like the quality of life improvement. So uh,
How much work is it to make that an option and just leave them both in? Or do you really have to choose so that development is easier?
it depends on the game, unfortunately. Some games like if the something a game already compute, it's a bit easy for us to patch it. Like we have like a scripting language that we add, and so we can expose those options. I mean, the easiest would be when like we're not doing that, but like I give you an example. Like Final Fantasy X was redone on the Switch. There was an option to have like the classic music or the remaster music because do you want the new music or you want like the original experience? Um, some options we have to remove, like two players mode or networking feature that are just harder. Like how do you simulate the PSP um, ad hoc gameplay where you got like multiple PSP next to each other to play? Now, if you want to do that on the PS4, PS5, now you need some kind of matchmaking server because you have to simulate like who is your friend, where not. Now you're completely changing the game flow. That's a lot of work. So that's unfortunately that's lost. Uh, so
Yeah.
Has your company ever had to work with an old game that had licensed music by real bands and things, and then
Yes.
you have to replace it.
Yes, I don't know how much I can say about this, but music is a lot of, as you can imagine, being on YouTube and stuff. Music is a lot of issues. Either you get the rights to the music, and then it costs a fortune, or you get the rights and it doesn't cost a fortune, but now there's actor's voice involved, and now it costs a fortune again. So, or you remove the music, and then sometimes you can do it, sometimes you cannot. Sometimes the music is licensed in Europe, but not in America. Sometimes you can replace the music, but then some games when you replace the music is not like Tony Hawk Skater Pro, for example. I don't know if we were doing that game, but let's say we were
Yeah.
really full of copyrighted music inside of it that they had the license originally for. Now, if you're gonna have this game as a port, they're probably gonna ask for, royalties again. So you replace by generic music, which is kind of boring for a skating game. So what do you do? Yes.
Is getting getting those rights is on your company. It's not up to
No.
Sony. And oh wow,
It's on Sony. It's on it. Like we're really doing development. Like we want to be a technology company, so we are really interested in writing the tech, helping Sony, or like writing the tech to help other companies do their own ports, like their own emulation. So I think it scales better, and also I think those publisher knows better their market. So
Just mentioning Tony Hawk Pro Skater, like those games are made. I mean, the gameplay is amazing, but the music is such a huge part of the nostalgia of wanting to go back and play the game. And for example, different game completely, but when Rock Band 4 came out for was that PS4? And so I bought it because Rock Band is one of my family's favorite things to do together. Going back through 1, 2, and 3 on the original releases. And my favorite song, Welcome Home by Coheed and Cambria, is impossible for me to get on my PS4 because I didn't purchase something at a specific period of time on the PS3. And that one song missing, this is where you're going to realize how ridiculous I am as a human being. But that one song missing, like that song is in my soul. It's part of my DNA. Like that song being gone from Rock Band, it's like for me there is no Rock Band, and I just can't go back knowing that I can't add that to a set list. So things like that are really important when you're porting or continuing long extinct games, because there's a tiniest microscopic drop in the bucket, but that's hundreds of dollars of DLC songs that I haven't bought on my PS5 because I did not return to that franchise.
right.
So weird. So what are some of the games that you are, what are some of the games or features that you're the most proud or excited that you got to bring those into the modern era of consoles and hardware?
A good question. First, I will just say I'm not alone on this. It's a teamwork. So I want to say I am talking for the team. What I'm the most proud of is when we get some of the performance right. I mean, let me think about this. There's a game like we did with Square Enix, Valkyrie Profile.
oh wow.
So that's I don't think the marketing was that strong on the game. So that one is if you play on your PS4, PS5, you look for Valkyrie Profile, you'll find that's our work there.
That's great, because that
that
is
was
a game that more people need to play.
That game requires a lot of work. It's a big RPG. It's full of animation. It's full of some things we had to replace, unfortunately, because the publisher asked for it. I'll give you an example. The game is full of pentagram, and for a reason that we don't know about, Square Enix asked us, as Sony, will ask us to remove those pentagram. So sometimes it's just in a movie, so I guess you just redo the movie. Sometimes it's in like a visual effect, like a sprite in the game, so you just like change it for a circle, something. Sometimes it's a mesh. When I say a mesh, it's like a level design object in the game, so that's a bit harder to remove. There's also a kind of reverb, like those. Square Enix is well known talking about Chrono Trigger at the beginning, for having beautiful music, and they really care about this. So when we did the port, it used some of the PSP version is a port of I think the PS1 or PS2. I don't remember exactly. There's a lot of reverb effect in the game, and those reverb effects were incorrectly emulated, and Square was able to detect those bugs. They were like, oh, fix the audio, fix those issues. And so now you get to the really nitty-gritty details about like, oh, let's listen to because music in RPGs very important for the mood, for the story. Can't get it wrong, can't make it stutter. So that was good work. A lot of work.
Yeah, those soundtracks actually. So fun fact about me: since the majority of my online teaching role is grading students' work, I usually have video game soundtracks as the in here while I'm grading, and I actually wrote everything that I have ever written academically. I actually manufacture psychological flow for myself using Austin Wintory's soundtrack from Journey. So like if that set of songs is playing, I'm automatically in like efficient work focused thinking mode. And that's because of that game. I played it at a period of time where I was doing some very important academic work, and it just created this like personality meld for me. So again, nostalgia, video games. This is why it's important for us to keep things alive and playable, is because some of my favorite games, it would be so easy for them to just fade away in time and no one ever hears of them. In fact, my students hardly ever know the games that I reference, sadly.
This is very sad. I mean, I work on Prince of Persia at Ubisoft. One version was on the Wii, completely different version. Prince of Persia: Forgotten Sands. I think we sold. That's public information. So I think we sold like 300,000 copies of it, which is okay. It was. I mean, it's enough. At the same time, it's not like Call of Duty selling 20 million and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Right. But still a game. Like I worked on this for 3 years. There was 100 people working on that. That game is now in a bargain bin somewhere for $1 in dollar stores. But it has worth. It has value, and it's lost. Like it's lost unless you take it, you look at it, like how do I play this on the Wii? I need a Wii. I need a working Wii. Like this is. So I feel, and I just mentioned one game right now. Like I mentioned the game I know because I work on it. There's probably 1,000 games like that, and I feel like we have lots of. I feel like it's like unrefined mineral that we have, and we need to find a way to make it easier to make them available again, and then people can just like, they can buy it again for like $3, $4 on whatever platform they are at, and then enjoy it again. So.
Yeah, Prince of Persia actually is a franchise that I wish there was more of. I don't know what is happening with it right now, but you mentioning that game just made me be like that. I mean, the Sands of Time, Warrior Within, and
Two Thrones.
Yes, those 3 games were so important to me at the times when they were coming out and new. And
well, they're working on a reboot of Sands of Time, but it's been in limbo.
It's in purgatory, right?
Yeah, they've had to restart the game like several times over the last 10 years.
Square had the same issue with Final Fantasy VII. People talk about, let's do it again. They were like, well, we can't do it again. It's going to cost us too much. Like, there's something weird about being more modern is harder to do the same game because we want to become more beautiful, more HD, and now we can't add them anymore. It's strange. So.
Yeah, actually, since our last episode, it's funny that you mentioned Final Fantasy VII. That trailer, oh my gosh, like that game has to be 3 times bigger than the first portion of the remake. It just I can't compute what to even expect with that game, which is a little different because they're redoing it and like they're PS5ing, a PS1 game, which is different.
Yeah,
but again,
if Chocobo breeding is even remotely as much complexity as the original. You got hundreds of hours of game.
As a Final Fantasy 14 player, I am not excited to find out what they do with chocobo breeding, but thank you for pointing that out. Hopefully they don't listen to our show and you didn't give them a new idea. Oh man. Okay, so I'm trying to think what's the next thing I want to know. There's so many places that you've worked that I'm having trouble zeroing in on specific things, Robin. It's just so cool to see all the
Here's
different...
the question.
Yeah.
So some of those old games have bugs, and
Yeah.
those bugs, some users like them. And then I see on like the internet, some people got mad in a newer version of the game that doesn't have the bug anymore. How do you?
That's
you feel
interesting. I guess it depends on the bug. Usually, we won't fix legacy bugs. Like if a game used to crash at some event, and it's hard to fix because they require you having the source code and recompiling the game. It wasn't fixed, so that will usually stay there. There might be bugs we end up fixing by mistake, which is it could be like physics-based bugs, depending on the frame rate. So most of the emulation are deterministic. That means that we are not trying right now to. That's not true though. So, give an example, Resident Evil, which is a game that was released. We render at higher resolution than the original game, but the texture are still the same. So it makes interesting visual where the mesh are more precise, but the actual like coloring inside the mesh is still like old school style.
Wait, are you talking about Resident Evil 1?
Resident Evil, let's see which one. Resident Evil Director's Cut.
Yeah,
yeah.
Original.
Okay.
Yeah, the original one. The DualShock. There was DualShock support because remember the first one did not have DualShock.
Right.
And so so that game, also the PS1, if you have good memory, triangles were wobbling, like the projection in the 3D was incorrect. So do you keep that, or and if you want to keep that, that's hard because modern hardware doesn't have that bug. Now you need to simulate the bug to get that feature. So usually you don't do that. So they would be like, but those don't impact the gameplay. They're usually like the only visual artifact. So no, I would like to know what the bug it was to tell you about it. But
Okay. Okay. So I think the example I was thinking of is in the PC version of Final Fantasy VII. It had a bug where you could get infinite items, and so they didn't. When the remasters came out, it was not the PC version. It was based off the PlayStation version, and so people got mad that they couldn't use their infinite item bug anymore.
Correct. That makes sense. I mean, we have case like where the version we are porting, like the American, European, or Japanese version, are slightly different. So they might have slightly different bugs. Like so, if you are into like speed runs, pretty important to know which version you're using. Like usually people will use the Japanese version to do speed run because the text is faster on the screen. You can pack more text, so now you have faster time. Yeah.
That's such an interesting point too. I didn't know I was going to learn that during this episode. Wow, Japanese games are easier to speedrun.
Yeah, for the same game. Some of them. There may be a hard mode sometimes too. So.
Yeah, that's true. That PSP port of the director's cut of Resident Evil, I used to speedrun that in between missed appointments. So like that was the very beginning of my career and doing counseling. And when someone would no-show their appointment, I would break out my PSP. Well, I guess the release of that game is not when I would be doing this, obviously. It was like 5 years later. But I would just break out my PSP and see if I could beat Resident Evil before my next appointment.
Interesting. Resident Evil, I play that one while testing a lot. It's funny because there's an option to remove the tank control. Like if you know the original game has tank control. And then in that game, there's an option in the original game, not the one we ported, to go back to like, I guess, camera control or realistic control. But it's funny, the default they made is using tank control. So they were still unsure back then, that people would want the new type of control. That's an interesting type of bug where Like, do you fix that? Like, do you remove the tank control completely? Because I know, like, other people would be playing the game like, ugh, I don't understand how to move the character. I'm pressing like left, he's going like he's turning around. So what's going on? So
Yeah, there is an adjustment period there, but because I played the original PS1 version and Resident Evil 2 that way and Resident Evil 3 that way, after about 10 minutes, my brain readjusts to the 90s and I actually
correct.
can't. I tried to stream the remake of the GameCube version
Mm-hmm.
about a year ago. I tried to just do it as a one-off stream. I actually played terribly because I did not have the tank controls on and my brain was making all kinds of judgment mistakes with how to run around those hallways because there was part of me that wanted to tank control, but I didn't have the tank controls as the scheme. Wow, that's such an interesting part of converting a game is just the controller.
Yeah, control is a big part because, like I was mentioning, the form factor. That's actually the reason why at Implicit we're mostly focusing on console. Like people would say, well, why are you not doing PC? Well, first of all, PC is already, I guess, covered through like Google Games and Steam. But also PC is, let's be honest, it's full of emulator. You can download them, hack them, and play. Usually, other people when they have a PC, they don't have a controller. When you have a console, you have a controller. Like you have a PS4, PS5, you got this guy here.
Yeah.
So this makes a difference. I think that's the main reason. So it's important to how do you use this thing? Make sure it behave as identical to the original game it used to. So don't want to introduce latency, don't want to introduce lag. What if the game had 2 players, split screen? Okay, cool. Now PS1 split screen with 2 controller. How do you map this when use let's say 4 controllers on the PS5? Like things like that. So
Oh man, I haven't had a game with a split screen in so long. I miss it actually.
Well,
yeah, Nintendo was pretty good at this.
yeah. Well, I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3 split screen on PS5.
Really? That's how the multiplayer works?
Yeah. That's why I waited for the PS5 version so I can split screen with my wife.
Nice, like Terra. I used to play Terraria split screen, and really old. Let's be old. The Settlers. I don't know if you've played this game.
Oh, I have. Yeah. That's interesting.
The original version on DOS, you could play 2 players split screen if you had 2 mouse. So you would plug 2 mouse into your PC, you did some kind of adapter, and then you could play 2 players.
That's so
time.
fun.
So
I would have never even thought to do that.
yeah, and like how many people play with 2 mouse? Like how much time they spend developing this thing? I don't know, but some programmer was a fan of it. He said, "Well, do this. It's awesome." So
That just makes me wonder how many video game features go, like, what percentage of gamers even discover features that would be very helpful to them.
mm,
I'm sure there's an art to just designing the options and things like that to make sure people discover the things they need.
yeah, that goes into UX and UI. A lot of psychology there, which might be your field.
You know, one of the things I've been playing a lot is Dead by Daylight. And one of my friends who's been playing it so much longer than me. I'm relatively new to the game. He just every couple days he sends me a message in Discord about a feature that's like, "Hey, just to make sure, are you doing this?" And one of them last week was, "I know you were complaining about how you can't hear things in the game because of my sense of hearing is not as good as it used to be." And he said, there's an accessibility feature that gives you a beating heart on your character so that you visually can see when there's an auditory stimulus. So you might not hear it, but the game will at least be telling you there's something you should be hearing. And that just increased my talent at the game by like 3 times. I'm still awful, but instead of being like 8% good at the game. I'm like 24% good at the game. So little things like that. So
Since you're talking about accessibility feature, another thing that's more modern that we didn't have in the past is like localization.
mhm.
So most of the game in the past were like mostly English. Some had like localization in Europe only. So now Sony would, say, for example, ask us to like localize the game. It needed to be in Polish, Turkish, Italian, and everything. So now you need to. We're not retranslating the game, but that means that, for example, let's say you're playing the US version of a game and you want it to be in Italian. Well, then which original game was in Italian? What was the European version? Well, does the American market have the license for the European version from 20 years ago? The answer is usually yes, but sometimes it's not.
Oh yeah.
It gets complicated. I mean, it's really the junction between the legal and technical. So it makes it for an interesting challenge.
Yeah, there's so much that goes on. If you're just thinking, this is more a comment for the listeners, but one thing that I am constantly in awe of whenever we have a guest is if you're just playing a game and you think about the player experience, you think about the things happening on the screen for a finished product. And I'm just always in awe of all of the thought and care and interest and all the effort that goes into just making that happen to where we don't have to think about the bottom of the iceberg. It really is like an effort iceberg where the part that's above water isn't even the beginning of the story. It's just the part we get to play.
Yeah, that makes sense. And people see the finished product only. Like they don't see when you watch a movie, you see the final movie, but the director of the movie see all the scene he has cut, all the scene they have removed, or like maybe a scene that I wish the effect was a bit better here. But as a listener, watcher, you don't see any of that, and you enjoy it if the
Yeah.
product is good.
But also, I think this is probably more of a creative, or artistic side of things. Sometimes that ignorance allows you to enjoy it, whereas having that knowledge makes you automatically analyze things because you know how it's made. So then you're thinking like, how did they do this? How did they do that? So when you play a video game, Robin, I'm sure that you you have some of that process
Yes,
where like instead of just enjoying it like me, Baldur's Gate, like haha, I went into a well, you're looking at like
I mean,
1,000 things even that I will never
I'm
even have a thought about.
there's it was stronger when I was working at Ubisoft. But yes, whenever I see loading screen, like my heart beat faster because I see all the code going on at this point, like all the potential for the game to crash as it's like unloading and changing like gigabyte of thing in memory and shuffling things around and referencing things. I'm like, oh my god! And then the next screen appear. Like, wow, this is a marvel of technology between electronic and so on. Um, Going back on Prince of Persia, I remember like it's a bit like the forest from the trees. Like when you work on the game, you see all the little trees and little details. And I've seen my family playing with the game, and it would be like doing a fight, and then I would see all the bugs. Like, oh my god, she did this move, and then during the move, the wrong effect didn't play, and I see that, and she did, and I was like, oh my god, it's terrible. And no, nobody realized this because they're busy playing the game. They're watching the story. They're trying to win the fight. Well, I'm not. I know what happened after the fight. They don't know. So if the bugs are really like tiny and the details are like the game is well polished, yeah, there's the big discontinuity between developer what they see in the game and the player. I think it goes that way. When I was at Twitch and so on, as I work a bit less on games, and more like about emulating the game or making it the game. Like Twitch was a bit, I guess, the previous version of this work where my job was to make other people play games and stream them, figure out. So at this point, I'm not developing the games anymore. So I was able to take a step back and just enjoy it more.
Okay. So
Um,
you go ahead, Gene.
Sorry. Oh, so this is back to the form factor issue. So we know upcoming soon is the re-releases of the Metal Gear Solid series. And I don't know if you're familiar with that game series,
Yes.
But so there were things in that, like, well, the trick
Yes.
with Metal Gear Solid 1 was in order to beat Psycho Mantis, you had to replace
you
the
have to
memory
use,
card in the
you
other
have to
slot.
use your right brain.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So I was kind of wondering, in your thought process, how you would actually make that work today.
This is weird. This is interesting because PlayStation 1 didn't have many rules about they were called TRCs, technical requirement checklist. So a lot of games did a bit of everything. Like you could read other games' save files. You could delete other games' save file if you wanted. That's why Metal Gear Solid does that. Like if you play other Konami game, it tells you like, oh, I see you like Suikoden,
Yeah.
things like that. Then when you get the torture part, it tells you to put the controller next to your arm, and that it's gonna like send you some relaxing nano machine, and then they just vibrate the controller on you. There was a few. Yeah, they switched controller port. I don't know how you would implement this properly on PS4, PS5. I mean, technically, yes, you could just say, well, no, first, no. Wireless control don't work this way. I guess you could switch the USB port on your PS4, PS5. You could have a menu. I mean, this game did lots of weird stuff. Metal Gear Solid 2 did a fake game over screen.
Yeah, the part where you alter the clock in Metal Gear Solid 3 to make the man die of old age.
Yeah, there's that. There's a game on the GameCube. I forgot it's an horror game. At some point in the game, like it plays with your mind and make you go into like the save menu and make you delete your save file. And you're like trying to cancel the menus and so on, and the game keep continuing. And you're like, what? I don't want to do that. And it actually it makes a fake delete screen and like memory card and so on. It's like so. I guess there's like metagaming at this point. Like there's the game, and I guess the form factor is I guess the junction between you, like it's you as a human. So this part it's an interesting point. Like, how do you keep that value in the modern game? I don't think you can fully. You need the original hardware to fully experience it. But
Yeah, I have no idea how you would even do that. Although sometimes there's weird buggy things that happen when I'm playing on my Steam Deck where the PS5 controller will stop being read by it. And so the solution is to go into the Steam menu and switch the controller back and forth between the Steam Deck and then back to the PS5 controller. So that is an example of technically switching your controller port in order to be able to play a game. So I actually figured that out without Googling because of Metal Gear Solid. I just I just had a feeling like this'll fix itself if I just switch the controller.
I don't remember which game, but there was one game we ported. I think had some cheat code on the second controller. So like as you were playing, if you press things on the second controller, it would activate some feature of the game. And so the question was like, well, how do we keep this thing? Like, do we add a menu? Do we disable it? Do we allow it? Like just get a second controller and make it work. I think we did the last. I have to check back. But, so at some time, okay, let's continue there. We love old games, but give you an example. QA, the people testing the game, sometimes they have never seen the original game. So they may not know that a feature is missing. So that becomes interesting. So you mentioned bugs that were like removed. That can be a cause where like the quality, or even myself or the team didn't even know that this feature was there. But there's some fan that will know about it, and then you will learn about it on Reddit and Twitter, and it will say like, and we read that, and we'll be like, hey, it's missing this camera feature. It's missing this. Oh, geez, okay. And then we go on YouTube. Because that's what we do, and discover the game. Oh yeah, you're right. He's right. They're right. So okay, let's make a patch and fix it now. So.
That's really interesting that your whole set of projects and the work you do is about bringing old games so we can play them in the present, but then your testers haven't played the original, so like 50% of your premise is lost on them. They're like the wrong sample.
Mm-hmm.
That's so neat.
And in my dream, I would crowdsource this. I would like, as we make the game, I would just tell, hey, we're working on game X. How about you test it out and hack it and figure it out? But we can't do that because there's like marketing and we can announce it and there's contract. So it's kind of strange where we know there are people that could help us, but we cannot contact them. So,
Yeah. Oh man, you kind of answered the question that I had as my final question. I was going to ask you about how you find people or how you pick,
oh,
like
that's a good
how
one.
do these projects get picked, even to, like, how's a game selected, like we need this to be on the Switch from 2004, 1997,
I wish I had a good answer. I think from what I can say, what we're trying to do is there's like we know which games sold a lot, right? We know which games are popular. You can make those lists, just look on the web. You can find the best PS2 games, for example. You can find the best, GameCube game. You kind of know which games are still popular by looking at streamers and YouTube channel. So sometimes there's give you an example, the Dark Cloud 2, I think, came out on PS2 and then came out again on PS4 as a limited game. And I think it was more popular on PS4. That's an interesting one, like where the game, and sometimes there's a game that was not popular and became popular and vice versa. So I think it's important to look at the trends. So I think there's like, it's a 3D thing where, what games sold a lot, what games are still popular, and what game I guess would be easy to emulate. Because, otherwise we just do all the games. Like, tomorrow we say, well, you know what? Let's take all the PS2 games. There's 3,000 of them. I don't know. Maybe more than that. And then, okay, let's do them. Well, on PC emulation, it's kind of easy. It's just there. Publishing requires a bit more work. So, um, and so I think it depends on what people are excited about for real. Like we have the team, and then the people we meet with, and they're like, well, this game is exciting. Let's try it. Like when we have the top 5, let's go talk with the IP holder, see what they say, and then let's go on that. So that's the current strategy of the company right now, to have more games.
So more often than not, you ask the person who has the rights to authorize that, and then you.
That's the current plan for expansion, because right now we are doing a lot of game with Sony.
Okay.
But for other platform, let's say on the Switch, Xbox, or whatever. Let's say, give you an example. Let's see the example. Let's say we wanted to do, and something we want to do. Let's say Mario on the PS5. That's not happening. Let's say Super Mario 3 on the PS5.
Wow.
The way we'd approach it, we'd have to approach Nintendo, which is probably like a tall order. But that would be the idea. I'd be like, hey, we're super excited. Let's get Mario 3 on the PS5. Like, okay, that's a strange idea, but yeah, yes, sure. And then that would be it. But technically it's doable. Like we just need that NES emulator running on the PS5, which we have the technology for. And we polish it, and then that's it. Now Nintendo's happy, Sony's happy, and everybody's happy, I guess. Except nobody's happy because nobody wants that. But it'll be cool.
I don't know. According to my Facebook timeline, like apparently the thing I'm most interested in is something that looks like the Game Boy Color but plays every NES and Sega Genesis and game that's ever been made. I see that once a day easily.
I see it's a bit side project, but I see other people doing new games for like the Sega Mega Drive, the NES, the GBA. There's still a market for this. People are making physical game for the NES.
Yeah.
So why not? Why not?
That's a whole other way of keeping games alive, is like recreating those cartridge games that actually work. It's sort of like the things you're doing, though, to update to modern consoles really does help people stay aware of the history of video games. Is that I think this conversation highlights the fun that's found in the quirks and in the old controllers, and the challenge of, do we smooth this out or do we leave it flawed deliberately, because the flaw is part of the experience. And one of the things, just to kind of connect as a clinician who talks with people about how do you benefit mentally from playing games, perfect things being around you all the time, it actually makes you have this ideal that's not possible. It creates anxiety. It creates lower self-esteem. Part of enjoying things is accepting flaws and seeing their value. And I think that you've said many things to me in this episode, Robin, that video games have some of that philosophy in it too, is it doesn't have to be perfect, it needs to be fun.
Totally. I think the fun is the reason why we play. There's a company Namco. I think fun everywhere was their motto. So basically, what they do is just make it fun. That's it. That's simple. So it looks simple, but that's what games are about.
Yeah. Gene, do you have anything else you want to ask or comment?
No. This has been great.
Yeah, Robin, thank you so much. This is seriously one of my favorite conversations I've had on this show.
Yeah, I've learned things.
Well, thank you, Gene and Dr. Kaufman. This is awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm man, I hope that we can have you on this show again, because now every time I play a game that is not on its original console iteration, I'm going to be wondering if you worked on it or if you are friends or know people that worked on it. But I'm also just going to be thinking about all the little things you pointed out in this episode. And in a way, I'll become more aware of all the things that I would have been oblivious to. That's so cool. All right. Well, let's do the wrap up. If these conversations sound fun to you and you're looking for some great people to play online games with, you can check out our guild, AIE, at aie-guild.org. And Robin, do you have anywhere you'd like to share for people to find you or support your work? Is that something?
Yes, if you want to see, you can support us the two ways. One, if you play PS4 PS5 games on the PS Premium Plus program, you find the classic games. There's all our work there with the help of Sony. Our website is implicitconversions.com. You can find, a bit of our story, what we do, some of our job opening if you're interested. If you work in the open source or emulation space, we're interested about hearing about you. We are a pretty remote company, and we do. I think most people join us to have fun and dream about their games. So if you're interested in that, we want to hear from you.
How much training would it take for somebody who is a licensed mental health counselor to be able to get in at your company?
You could probably be QA, or if we grow up enough, I think we could definitely have an opening for you on the UI UX, like all those options that we need to show. We have like a rewind feature in our game, like you can take snapshot and then go back in time.
I love that.
So we implemented this ourselves. We're a bunch of engineers, so things are a bit square. Maybe someone like you could make it a bit prettier and more interesting, and like say, oh, you should make a feedback here, and then you should make a deny here, and so on. So things like that would be useful.
I wasn't expecting a real answer to that question. Now I'm thinking about all these things. That sounds like that seriously does sound like some interesting opportunities there. All right, so please, everyone who's listening to the show, check out Implicit Conversions' work, support them, get those PS Plus subscriptions going. That's actually a great service in and of itself. So I have one last quest for everyone to collect for the day. Enjoy your games on whatever you play and continue the journey.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Gene, what's the next old game you're going to play?
I've been meaning to play the Chrono Cross remaster, but I don't know.